Widowed cowboy saves beaten girl from stepfather. What happened next shocked everyone. The twin suns of Red Mesa were sinking behind the Red Mountains, painting the sky with soft orange light. Dust rolled slowly across the plains like quiet waves, and the wind carried a low, humming sound from the distant mining towers. It was a lonely place, but Elias Kane had chosen loneliness long ago. Elias was known across the frontier as a quiet cowboy who spoke only when needed. Years earlier, he had worked among crowds, trading livestock drones and helping build settlements, but everything changed when his wife died during a mining accident. After that day, he moved far away from busy towns and built a ranch near the edge of civilization. His ranch was simple but strong. Solar fences stretched across the land, robotic cattle grazed slowly under the watch of hovering sensors, and a small metal house stood against the wind. Elias liked things that did not change. Machines followed clear rules, unlike people. That evening, Elias rode across the plains on his hoverhorse, checking a damaged fence after a recent storm. The wind felt colder than usual, and dark clouds gathered quickly on the horizon. He knew another dust storm was coming. As he approached a broken transport wagon half buried in sand, something caught his attention. At first, he thought it was scrap metal moving in the wind, but then he noticed a small shape hiding behind the wreckage. He slowed down and stopped a few meters away. Years of living on the frontier had taught him to be careful. "Hello," he said calmly, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm not here to hurt you." The shape didn't move. Only after a long moment did a girl slowly step into view. She looked young, maybe 13 or 14. Her clothes were dusty and torn, and her eyes were full of fear. She held her arms close to her body as if trying to disappear. Elias raised his hands slightly to show he meant no harm. He removed a water flask from his belt and placed it on the ground between them. "You look tired," he said. "Water's clean, you can take it." The girl stared at him for several seconds before stepping forward carefully. She grabbed the flask quickly and drank as if she hadn't seen water for days. Elias watched silently. He knew not to ask too many questions too soon. "My name's Elias," he said after a while. She hesitated, then whispered, "Mara." The wind grew stronger, sending dust swirling around them. Elias glanced at the sky. The storm was coming faster than expected. "You can't stay out here," he said. "Storm will hit soon. My ranch isn't far." Mara stepped back slightly unsure. Trust did not come easily to her. "You don't have to decide forever," Elias added gently. "Just until the storm passes." The words seemed to reach her. After a moment, she nodded slowly. Elias helped her climb onto the hoverhorse behind him, careful to move slowly so she wouldn't feel threatened. As they rode toward the ranch, he felt a strange mix of responsibility and hesitation. Helping someone meant change, and he had avoided change for years. The storm arrived just as they reached the ranch. Strong winds shook the walls while dust hit the windows like rain. Inside, the air was warm and quiet. Elias offered Mara a blanket and simple food. She sat at the table silently, watching every movement he made. Elias activated a small cleaning drone that gently removed dust from her clothes. She seemed surprised by the kindness but said nothing. "You can rest here," he told her, pointing to a small guest room. "Door locks from inside if you want." She nodded again, still cautious. Later that night, Elias sat alone in the main room, listening to the storm outside. He wondered why she had been alone in the desert. Runaways were not uncommon on frontier worlds, but something about her fear felt deeper. The next morning, the storm passed, leaving the sky clear and bright. Myra stood outside watching the robotic cattle move slowly across the plains. For the first time, Elias saw curiosity replace fear in her eyes. "They follow signals?" she asked quietly. "Mostly," he replied, "but they still need watching." She walked closer to one of the drones, studying it carefully. Elias noticed how quickly she understood its movement patterns. "You know machines?" he asked. "A little," she said. He showed her how to adjust a sensor panel, and she fixed a minor error almost immediately. Elias raised an eyebrow in surprise. Not many people learned that quickly. As the day passed, she helped with small tasks. She didn't speak much about herself, and Elias didn't push. Trust took time. In the evening, while preparing dinner, Elias received a communication alert from the nearby settlement. A public message appeared on the screen, a missing child report. The description matched Mara. Elias felt a heavy weight in his chest. He glanced toward her. She froze when she saw the message, fear returning instantly. They'll send me back, she whispered. Elias turned off the screen slowly. No one decides anything tonight, he said calmly. You're safe here. She looked at him, searching for doubt in his words, but found none. Outside, the red sun dipped below the horizon again. The ranch felt different now, less empty, less silent. Elias realized that helping her might change everything, whether he was ready or not. And as darkness settled over Red Mesa, both of them stood at the edge of a new beginning neither had planned. Morning light spread across the red plains like a soft golden blanket. The storm had cleaned the sky, leaving the air fresh and quiet. Elias woke early as usual, stepping outside to check the solar fences and scan the horizon. Life on Red Mesa followed simple rhythms: work, survival, and silence. But now the ranch felt different. Myra stood near the robotic cattle, watching them move slowly through the fields. She held a small tool in her hand, studying one of the sensor panels Elias had shown her the day before. When she noticed him watching, she quickly stepped back, unsure if she was allowed to touch anything. "It's okay," Elias said calmly. "If you see something broken, you can tell me." She nodded and pointed toward a blinking light on the drone's side. "Signal delay," she said quietly. Elias walked closer and checked. She was right. He adjusted the setting and looked at her with surprise. "You learn fast," he said. Mara gave a small shrug but didn't smile. Trust was still growing between them. The morning passed with simple work. Elias showed her how to feed the maintenance bots and how to track weather patterns using the ranch system. She listened carefully, asking small questions now and then. Each question revealed intelligence and curiosity. For Elias, teaching someone again felt strange. After losing his wife, he had stopped sharing his knowledge with others. Working alone had been easier. But watching Myra learn reminded him of a life he once had, a life filled with laughter and partnership. Later that day, they sat together at a small table outside. The red mountains looked calm under the twin suns, and the robotic cattle moved like shadows across the land. "You don't have to stay if you don't want," Elias said gently. "When you're ready, we can find a place that feels right for you." Mara stared at the ground. "I don't want to go back," she said softly. Elias didn't answer right away. He had seen fear before, but hers carried deep pain. He understood that pushing her for details might break the small trust they had built. "You're safe here," he repeated. She looked up at him, searching his face for doubt. Slowly, her shoulders relaxed. In the afternoon, a supply trader arrived in a small transport ship. The trader, an older woman named Lena, had known Elias for years. She stepped out of her ship with a warm smile but paused when she saw Myra standing beside him. "Got company?" Lena asked playfully. Elias nodded, just helping someone until she figures out her next step. Lena didn't ask more questions, but her eyes showed curiosity. She greeted Myra kindly, offering her a small packet of dried fruit. Myra accepted it carefully, unsure how to respond to kindness from strangers. While Elias unloaded supplies, Lena spoke quietly to him. "People in town are talking," she said. "Missing girl report. You know anything about that?" Elias stayed calm. "She's safe here." Lena nodded slowly. "That's good. Just be careful. Frontier gossip travels faster than ships." After she left, Elias thought about her words. Living far from town usually kept him away from rumors, but this situation might bring attention he didn't want. That evening, Mara explored the ranch more confidently. She followed a maintenance drone and helped repair a broken sensor. For the first time, she smiled slightly when the machine restarted successfully. "You fixed it," Elias said. "We fixed it," she corrected quietly. The word surprised him. It felt like the beginning of something new: teamwork, maybe even trust. Days passed and routines formed. Mara helped with small tasks, learning how to manage energy systems and monitor cattle movements. Elias noticed she laughed sometimes when the drones behaved strangely. The ranch no longer felt empty, but peace didn't last forever. One afternoon, a communication alert appeared again on Elias' console. The missing child report had been updated. Authorities were actively searching nearby regions. Mara saw the message and froze. Fear returned to her eyes instantly. "They'll take me," she whispered. Elias stood beside her, his voice calm but firm. "No one takes you without listening to you first." She shook her head. "They won't believe me," Elias thought carefully. Hiding her completely could cause bigger problems later, but forcing her to face something she feared would break her trust. "We find a better way," he said finally. "One where you choose what happens next." That night they sat by a small fire outside the ranch. The sky was filled with stars, and distant lights from mining towers blinked slowly. Mara spoke more than she had before. She didn't explain everything, but she described feeling trapped, watched, and scared in her old home. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but Elias listened without interrupting. When she finished, silence filled the air. "You were brave to leave," he said quietly. She looked surprised by his words. "No one ever said that before," she admitted. Elias understood that sometimes people only needed someone to believe them. Over the next few days, they worked on a plan together. Elias contacted a legal advisor in another colony, asking general questions about protection laws without giving names. He wanted to make sure Mara would be safe if authorities arrived. Meanwhile, Mara continued learning ranch work. She even suggested improving one of the energy systems to save power during storms. Her idea worked perfectly, and Elias felt proud watching her confidence grow. But deep inside, he knew change was coming. The frontier rarely allowed peace to last forever. One evening, as the red sun set behind the mountains, a distant ship appeared in the sky, heading toward the ranch. Its lights flashed slowly, growing larger with every passing second. Mara saw it and stepped closer to Elias. "Someone's coming," she said quietly. Elias watched the ship descend, his expression serious. "Yes," he replied, "and whatever happens next, we face it together." The wind moved gently across the plains as the ship landed in the distance, carrying with it questions, challenges, and a future neither of them could predict. The ship's engines hummed loudly as it settled on the red sand a short distance from the ranch. Dust lifted into the air like a slow storm, swirling around the landing lights. Elias stood beside Mara, his posture calm but alert. He had faced many challenges on the frontier, but this felt different. This time, someone else depended on him. Mara's hands trembled slightly. She tried to hide it, but Elias noticed. Without looking directly at her, he spoke quietly. "Stay behind me if you feel unsure," he said. "And remember, you have a voice. No one can take that away." She nodded, though fear remained in her eyes. The ship's door opened with a soft mechanical sound. Two local officers stepped down first, dressed in gray frontier uniforms. Behind them came a tall man with sharp features and cold eyes. He walked with confidence, as if he already owned the ground beneath his feet. Myra froze. "That's him," she whispered. Elias felt a heavy weight settle in his chest. The man smiled politely at the officers, then turned toward Elias with a calm expression that did not reach his eyes. "Good afternoon," the man said smoothly. "I'm looking for my stepdaughter." She ran away and caused quite a bit of trouble. One of the officers stepped forward. "We received a signal that the missing girl might be here," she said. "We need to confirm her safety." Elias nodded slowly. "She's safe," he replied. "She's been under my care since I found her in the desert during a storm." The officer glanced at Mara. "Is that true?" Mara hesitated. Her voice felt small against the wide open space, but she forced herself to speak. "Yes." The stepfather sighed dramatically, shaking his head. "She has a strong imagination," he said gently. "Teenagers sometimes misunderstand strict rules. I only want to bring her home." Elias watched closely. Something about the man's tone felt wrong, too calm, too practiced. "We need to hear from her directly," the officer said, turning toward Mara again. Mara stepped forward slowly. Her eyes moved between Elias and the officers, searching for courage. "I don't want to go back," she said quietly. The stepfather's smile faded slightly. "You're confused," he replied. "You've always had a home. You belong with family." Mara shook her head, taking another small step backward. Elias felt protective anger rise inside him, but he kept his voice steady. "She deserves to be heard," he said. The officers exchanged glances. One of them activated a recording device. "We'll listen to both sides," she said. "That's procedure." As the discussion continued, Elias noticed something strange. His ranch security system, running quietly in the background, began sending alerts to his wrist device. He glanced down discreetly. The system had detected unusual data signals coming from the visitor's ship, encrypted transmissions linked to mining operations. Elias wasn't an investigator, but years of frontier life had taught him how to recognize suspicious patterns. He stayed silent for the moment, listening carefully. The stepfather spoke about discipline, responsibility, and safety, describing himself as a caring guardian. His words sounded perfect, almost rehearsed. But when Mara spoke, her voice carried real emotion. She explained how she felt watched all the time, how she was afraid to speak freely, and how leaving had been the only way she could breathe again. The officers listened carefully, their expressions growing more serious. Elias decided to share what he had discovered. He quietly sent the security data to the officer's system. Moments later, one officer frowned while reading the information. "Sir," she said to the stepfather, "can you explain these mining logs connected to your transport?" The man hesitated for the first time. "Business records," he said quickly. "Some of these operations appear unregistered," the officer replied calmly. "We'll need clarification." The mood shifted instantly. Mara looked surprised, and Elias felt a quiet sense of relief. Truth had a way of changing everything. The officers began asking more detailed questions. The stepfather's calm confidence started to crack. Small inconsistencies appeared in his answers, and his tone became sharper. "I came here for my daughter," he said impatiently. "This is unnecessary." "We're simply ensuring safety," the officer responded. Mara stood silently beside Elias, watching the conversation unfold. Slowly, courage replaced fear. For the first time, she realized she wasn't alone. Finally, the officers stepped aside to discuss privately. The wind moved gently across the plains, carrying the distant sound of cattle drones. After a few minutes, they returned. "Based on current information," one officer said, "the girl will remain under protective supervision while we investigate further." The stepfather's face tightened. "You can't do that," he said sharply. "We can," the officer replied calmly, "until the investigation is complete." Mara exhaled slowly, as if releasing a breath she had been holding for years. The stepfather turned toward Elias, his expression cold. "You've made a mistake," he said quietly. Elias met his gaze without fear. "Maybe," he answered, "but helping someone feel safe is never wrong." The officers escorted the man back toward his ship. As it lifted into the sky and disappeared into the clouds, the tension slowly faded. Mara looked up at Elias. "Thank you," she said softly. He shook his head. "You spoke for yourself, that's what mattered." Later that evening, they sat outside watching the sunset. The ranch felt peaceful again, but both of them knew life had changed. "You weren't scared?" she asked. "I was," Elias admitted. "But courage isn't about not being scared. It's about choosing what's right anyway." She thought about his words, feeling stronger than before. For Elias, something inside him had shifted too. He realized he wasn't just protecting someone, he was helping someone build a future. And as the stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky, both of them sensed that the hardest part of their journey might already be behind them, though the future still held surprises they could not yet see. The days after the officers left felt quieter than usual. The ranch returned to its slow rhythm, but something had changed. The air no longer felt heavy with fear. Instead, there was a sense of waiting, like the calm before a new chapter begins. Elias woke early as always, stepping outside to watch the twin suns rise over the red plains. The robotic cattle moved across the land in smooth patterns, guided by soft signals from the ranch system. He checked the solar fences and adjusted a weather drone, but his thoughts kept drifting back to Mara. She had changed since the confrontation. The fear that once followed her like a shadow had begun to fade. She walked with more confidence now, asking questions, sharing ideas, and even laughing sometimes when the maintenance drones behaved in strange ways. That morning, she joined him near the barn, holding a small toolkit. "I adjusted the energy output on the north fence," she said. "It should last longer during storms." Elias checked the system and nodded with quiet approval. "Good work." She smiled slightly, a small but important change from the shy girl he had first met. Despite the peaceful routine, uncertainty remained. The investigation was still ongoing, and neither of them knew what decision the authorities would make. Elias tried not to think too far ahead, focusing instead on the present moment. A few days later, a message arrived from the colony officials requesting a meeting through secure communication. Elias invited Mara to sit beside him as the holographic screen activated. One of the officers they had met earlier appeared, her expression calm and respectful. "We've completed most of the investigation," she said. "We found evidence of illegal operations connected to the man who claimed guardianship. There were unsafe working conditions and several violations of frontier laws." Mara listened silently, her hands resting tightly together. "For now," the officer continued, "he will not have custody. The priority is ensuring your safety and future." Mara's shoulders relaxed slightly. The officer turned toward Elias. "We understand you've been providing a safe environment. We appreciate your cooperation." Elias nodded. "She deserves stability." The officer paused before speaking again. "We would like to discuss long-term arrangements. Would you consider becoming her legal guardian?" The question filled the room with silence. Elias had expected something like this, yet hearing it aloud made his heart feel heavy. He had lived alone for years, avoiding responsibility beyond his ranch. Becoming someone's guardian meant opening his life again, risking loss, change, and uncertainty. He glanced at Mara. She looked down, clearly afraid to hope too much. "I don't want to force anything," she said softly. "I just don't want to go somewhere I don't feel safe." Elias took a deep breath. Memories of his past returned, laughter shared with his wife, dreams they once had about building a family on the frontier. For years he believed that part of his life was gone forever. But standing beside Mara, he realized something important. Helping her had already changed him. The ranch felt alive again, filled with purpose rather than silence. "I'll do it," he said finally. Mara looked up quickly, surprise and relief mixing in her eyes. The officer smiled gently. "We'll begin the official process." After the call ended, neither of them spoke for a moment. The decision felt big, almost unreal. "You don't have to," Mara said quietly. "I know," Elias replied, "but I want to." The words felt true in a way he hadn't experienced for a long time. In the following weeks, life on the ranch grew busier. Officials visited to complete evaluations, but the atmosphere remained respectful and calm. They observed how Mara worked alongside Elias, how she learned quickly, and how she felt comfortable in the environment. Meanwhile, Mara began suggesting improvements to the ranch systems. She redesigned the drone paths to save energy and created a small weather prediction program using old colony data. Elias watched her work with pride, realizing she wasn't just surviving anymore, she was building something. One evening, after finishing repairs, they sat together outside watching the sunset. The sky turned deep orange and purple, reflecting off the metal surfaces of the ranch buildings. "Do you miss being alone?" Mara asked suddenly. Elias thought carefully. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but loneliness and peace are not the same thing." "I had quiet before, but not purpose." She considered his words, then nodded slowly. "I used to think running away was the end," she said. "Now it feels like the beginning." Elias smiled faintly. Days later, the final approval arrived. The authorities confirmed that Mara could remain on the ranch permanently under Elias' guardianship. The news spread quickly through nearby settlements, surprising many people who had once doubted the situation. Some neighbors visited, bringing supplies and friendly greetings. Lena the trader laughed warmly when she heard the news. "Knew you had a good heart," she said to Elias. He shrugged slightly, embarrassed by attention. As time passed, the ranch changed in small ways. New plants grew near the house, tools were organized more carefully, and laughter replaced long stretches of silence. Elias realized that healing didn't come from forgetting the past, but from building something new alongside it. One morning, while preparing for a long ride across the plains, Mara stood beside him wearing a small hat he had given her. She looked confident, ready for adventure. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Checking new land," he replied. "Maybe expanding the ranch." She grinned, excitement shining in her eyes. As they rode together under the bright twin suns, Elias felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. What began as a simple act of kindness, helping a frightened girl during a storm, had turned into a new family, a new future, and a new reason to keep moving forward. And for everyone who watched from afar, the biggest surprise was not the rescue or the investigation, but the quiet transformation of two lonely lives finding strength together. The red plains stretched endlessly ahead, full of possibilities waiting to be discovered.